also, when you are scared, you become paralysed. What I will tell you and the viewers is that when you're scared, it's really tough for you to stand up to anyone, even if it's a husband or whoever.
Good evening, Australia. Welcome to the show. I'm Michael Kuzilny, and this is Tough Times Never Last. We've been doing this show for quite a few years now. I'm a criminal defence lawyer, former police officer, and I've been dealing with people going through difficult times for the last probably 3 decades. And we thought it's inspirational for down-to-earth people to come on the show to inspire others. So wherever you are around Australia or the world, love and best wishes. If you're going through some difficult times at the moment, just remember tomorrow's another day. Put a big smile on your face and remember that tough times never last. On tonight's show, we've got a lovely and courageous lady. Her name is Saha Gali. She's a victim of domestic violence, and she says the day she got married in 1993 was like signing her death certificate. Saha, thank you, darling, for coming on.
Thank you.
So 1993, it was an arranged marriage and daily abuse.
Yep, so pretty much if it wasn't physical, it was psychological, emotional, financial. So I think most people think that family violence is just having a black eye, but it's not. It's actually wearing you down every single day to the point where you start to think that maybe I'm doing something wrong, maybe I should sort of do whatever he wants just to get him to leave me alone. So it kind of breaks your spirit, and you get to the point where you think, well, what can I do, especially if you're from a culture that doesn't approve of divorce. Divorce is a very taboo word in the Middle Eastern culture.
And what background, Saha?
Egyptian.
And you're such a, we met before, and you've got such a big heart, you're so kind, and you would have been like that as back in 1993. How did you meet this man?
It was pretty much arranged, so I didn't get to meet him. It was just like, okay, you're going to marry this guy and that's it. So I felt like, okay, being the good little Egyptian girl, you just agree, just to make everyone happy, but you don't think of yourself. So here I was with a Masters of Educational Psychology out of Melbourne Uni, a very smart, educated person, but I felt like looking back, what a stupid girl. But when you're in that situation, for viewers out there, you don't actually look at the long term, you look at the immediate. So what's the repercussions if you don't marry him? So you'll upset your family, and being that kind of culture, you just get married.
And where did you get married, Saha?
So in Melbourne, I got married in Melbourne. So pretty much from day one, it wasn't going to work out. This guy was pretty much on an ego trip, and his form of control was either his fist, because his fist did the talking, or he'd lock me up, or he'd make sure that I wouldn't be able to leave the house. Back then, I didn't have a mobile phone or any form of communication, so I was cut off from the world. And I think with the perpetrators, in a lot of the work that I currently do, perpetrators, they cut you off from your family, from your friends, so that when you try and reach out, they haven't seen you for a long time, so it's really hard for them to believe that something's happening.
I'm sorry to hear that you went through that, and viewers, it's quite sad, isn't it? Sometimes we can make imprisonments of a job, a relationship, but it sounds like Saha was in prison for 13 years. She told me in the break that one day she came home and the folding of the clothing wasn't to her husband's liking, so he kicked her teeth out, and that's a quite disgraceful act. Is that what happened?
Yeah, so pretty much I didn't fold them to his liking, so he dragged me down the corridor and punched me and kicked me, and I had a child with me, like I had my child with me, but to him it was all about his way or else there's no way. Police get involved and you get intervention orders, but pretty much back then it was a piece of paper. But things are changing, so I look now to what happened to me back in the day. It was just a piece of paper. It was your word against his word, numerous times in court. Court is a hard thing for anyone who's been through family violence, because not only do you relive the pain, you have to justify it and tell the magistrate that this really happened. But if you have no physical proof, there's no bruises or anything, even if you do, it doesn't really matter, because it depends on the day and how the perpetrator presents in the lovely suit and the representation.
I agree, Saha. And I found the other day, I was at one of our magistrates' court in Melbourne, and somebody, and I know, having been a police officer before, it takes courage to finally go to court and get in the witness box and reveal the story. It takes a lot of courage, and I found that I'm seeing this a bit, not too often, but that the victims are almost treated like they're the offenders. There wasn't much warmth, there wasn't much kindness or support, and I really think that sometimes the courts and all the government agencies should just show a bit more loving kindness. We've created such a selfish and hate-filled world. I was watching this poor lady in the witness box, and she was being bombarded almost like she was the offender. So that's a real take-home lesson. Whatever position we're in, whether police, adjudicators, or social workers or corrections, show a bit more kindness, and because it's difficult to make that decision to report that to the police, isn't it?
Yeah, well, not only just reporting it to the police, because the police do a great job actually doing all the paperwork, but once it gets to court, it depends on the representation. Now, I had to represent myself because I couldn't afford it. Now, that took a lot of guts to stand up and actually defend myself and tell the judge or the magistrate, what had happened. But when you're up against someone who knows the legal lingo, sometimes you're at a pretty much disadvantage. But what I felt was that I was reliving it. So here I was, I got rid of the perpetrator, but I was now having to justify what has happened to me. Now, I think I became really strong when I did stand up and actually got my children, got custody 100% with no legal representation. But the take-home message was, what am I going to do to help others? Because 10 years of in and out of court, because this guy was not going to let go. So it wasn't about getting anything. It was about how he could show the world that he was very powerful. Now, was
he a big man, or is he a big man?
He was bigger than me, physically taller than me. I mean, and also when you are scared, you become paralyzed. What I will tell you and the viewers is that when you're scared, it's really tough for you to stand up to anyone, even if it's a husband or whoever. When you're scared, you get to the point where you think, well, what can I do? You just don't know you don't think any rational thoughts. You become so scared, you turn on to survivor mode. So for 13 years, I was a survivor mode. I just wanted to be okay so that my kids are okay. A lot of the times, whether you are a male or female and you go through family violence, you don't have a life. It's about living for the others, your children or your family.
Well, you've done a wonderful job bringing up your children. They're very smart and wholesome and confident young kids. And would you believe you, as Saha's ex-husband, breached the intervention order 218 times? And we've got to remember the penalties for breaching an IVO or intervention order, they say up to 2 years imprisonment or up to $24,000 in fines. These are the maximum penalties. But the real outcome when he went to court was
just a joke, a slap on the hand, and threats to kill. He got a $200 fine. He got a suspended jail term, and then he took it to the county court, a higher level, and he got away with it. I think the problem is that what I was facing was this guy was not going to stop, but he always...
We might talk about his attitude, why he didn't stop after the next break, but thank you very much for watching. Don't go away. Saha Gali is a beautiful woman with a very kind heart, but for 13 years she lived in her own imprisonment in a very, very violent relationship. During that relationship, she was kicked in the teeth, lost her teeth, dragged around the house. There was threats to kill, sexual abuse, mental abuse and physical abuse, and still got through it nicely. 213 breaches of intervention orders, no jail terms. Threats to kill, no jail terms, and now apparently the ex-husband only lives 300 metres down the track. That's strange. Why does he want to be so close?
It's about control, because in the culture that I belong to, women don't divorce men, men divorce women. So for me to break that mould and to stand up and show other women that it's not okay to be abused, it's not okay to live through fear every day, and it's not okay to want to wish yourself dead, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to die because I wasn't coping with the fact that every day I wonder what he's got planned for me. It's a hard way to live.
Saha, you describe there's the kicking, you lost some teeth, yeah? Yep. You lost some teeth, God bless you. Was there other incidents when he was just angry and he'd punch you in the head, or?
Oh, he'd punch me, he'd make sure that he'd punch me in the temple, so, he wanted me dead. I mean, it was because in his mind I wasn't listening to him anymore, because year in, year out, I became stronger at the end. I wasn't strong at the start. I would let him do whatever just because of my fear. But towards the end, I kind of started to stand up for myself and tell him that I would tell the police, and he didn't really like that, because if I opened my mouth to the police. And
so when you went to, family gatherings or socials, and you would say something he didn't approve of, would he then take you aside and give you a smack, or?
Well, there's one particular incident where it was a family gathering and he just looked at me and I just froze and he said, "I'll just wait till you get home." So he was never going to show his true colours in front of people. It was like he wore a different jacket outside, and in the house it was this dark, demonic sort of person. So he would never show his true colours, but he would always threaten me, when you get home. So living like that was not healthy for myself or for my children. It takes a lot of guts to stand up to a perpetrator, and it takes a lot of guts to actually walk away, because then you are financially ruined, then you are emotionally scarred and psychologically affected.
Of course.
So for me to be a survivor and an advocate survivor now who speaks for other women, started my own foundation, Wise Angel Foundation.
Yeah, the Wise Angel Foundation. Can we find that on the internet?
Yes, you can. And we've got a Facebook as well, and we've got a lot of activities. We do a lot of fundraiser. It's a survivor helping survivor.
Congratulations, Saha, on creating that. Do people come along and...
They come along and support, and I go visit women and get them their necessities, but I'm there for them 24/7. So
that's lovely.
They ring me. I mean, I'm even helping people overseas who have fled this country to actually live a quiet, peaceful life. See, family violence is not what people think. It's not the bruises. There's scars that will never heal. My scars will never heal because they're on the inside. But I've actually got to stand up now because I know what it's like to be down. And tough times, like you say, never last. And they didn't last for me. But I made that choice. Other people don't make that choice. They stay in that relationship. They're scared because they don't know what to do. We have a lot of services out there. There's services. But once you hit the quota, there's limits. You can't get that
So
service.
I'm finding, and folks, I'm finding around the courts that a lot of different nationalities are coming to Australia now, and it's fair enough, other countries have perhaps master-servant relationships. Other countries maybe see the wife more as property, and it's accepted. I've been to countries where husbands beat up on their wives next to 3 police officers, and it's accepted. And I find it quite strange, but I think what the Australian justice system are trying to do, and the police, it's all about education. But we're seeing more and more of this master-servant relationship and the domestic violence in the courts amongst the Asian communities, the Indian communities. Yep. Not all, but do you find that...
I think it happens in all communities.
All communities.
I think, but in some communities it's more prevalent because back home that's what they do. I think my quote is that we're cross-culturally illiterate, we're multicultural, but we don't understand how cultures actually click. And what you find is that these guys are getting away with it because they've got good representation. And let's face it, they're not left with the bundle of kids who are, needing their needs, wanting their needs. They're free to go, rock up at court, look magnificent, and pretend that, this woman's a crazy... See, women come across as crazy when they're emotional.
Of course.
Because when you've been through something like domestic violence, you're not going to stand in the court and say, someone bashed me or someone hurt me. You come across as quite emotional. And I think what's being the problem is that both lawyers and magistrates and judges really need to be educated that these guys, they are acting. But they've got away with it because they're so smooth operators, but also back home where they've come from, they're allowed because they are the boss.
So what's the worst thing that ever happened to your ex-husband? He went to the magistrates' court and he went to the county court. What happened to the county court?
The county court, he had a really expensive barrister who represented him, and he got away with it again. So it was a slap on the wrist, and I was really disgusted to think that the judge, who was a Jewish woman, could sit in that chair and say, well, really, did it happen? Is it all in your mind? No, it's not all in my mind, because who's got the time and energy to stand up in court and say stuff like that? If there's 1% of lies out there, there's 99% of women, all men who've been abused, and they just want their right to live. All we wanted, or all I wanted, was just to live in peace.
Saha, when we check your ex-husband's rap sheet, his criminal antecedents or record, we'd find so many breaches on there. He'd have difficulties travelling, he'd have difficulties getting a job. Does he work for himself?
He works for himself. For himself, so I think he'll have a hard time getting out of the country or things like that. But because now I'm away from him, I don't really kind of engage in what he does.
He's not too far away, 300 metres. And your house is like a fortress, isn't it? It's got
so
cameras, security cameras. How many?
So the victims of crime put a really big fence around it. We've got about 5 cameras. There's surveillance all the time, pretty much just to make sure that we're safe, because in the past, weird people have come to the door with knives and guns and... So,
isn't that amazing, folks? That it must be a real problem when we put so much security on. This man must have been a real problem, a dangerous problem. And I think you also told me one time that a man approached you and said, made death threats and was going to kill the family?
Yes. So I think what people don't understand is that family violence is not just about the perpetrator.
No.
Perpetrator gets his little, sidekicks to do his jobs. But the whole thing is you've got to be strong in yourself. You're strong for your children. I mean, all mothers, all fathers love their children dearly. I mean, that's why I live. My life is my children. So I would never let them down. So initially I thought, well, I'm letting them down because they're living in that environment. To get out of that environment, doesn't matter who threatens you, you become like a lioness, like you protect your children.
You are a lioness. We'll talk to the lioness shortly. Thanks. But I'm glad you're smiling again, and I'm glad you're smiling. And viewers, remember, tough times never last. We'll be back shortly. And it's certainly a very heartfelt story. Saha Gali, 13 years of continuous abuse, sexual violence, and also psychological abuse. Most people sort of have intermittent abuse, but she's really turned a negative into a positive, from that imprisonment of marriage to a life of helping others. Congratulations, and you were nominated for the Australian of the Year in 2006.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Yep. So out of the negative, so 2005, leaving all the past and then moving forward, it was more like, okay, I'm going to now help others because I know what it's like to go without. So I started to get bread from, Baker's Delight and all the bakeries around me, and delivering it to housing commissions, to nursing homes, to people on the streets. And that filled something within me that there's people out there that have got it even harder than me. So I started to kind of heal. It's a healing process.
Amazing.
So from my survivor mode, I became a human mode, that now it's time to live, but also not to be selfish, to pretend that, okay, it didn't happen. It happened, but what I take from it is to go forward and help others. Amazing.
And as a result of all this, do you dislike our court system or the police or the magistrates and the judges?
I don't dislike it. I just feel sorry for them. They really don't know what domestic violence is. There's a lot of people out there creating awareness, but we need education and we actually need action. I mean, I've done a lot of shows where we talk about, this is the awareness and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, but what have we really done? Pouring money into a problem doesn't solve it. It's changing the mindset of all cultures. So we need to start going into cultural groups, talking to the elders and leaders and the priests and the monks, whoever, because it comes from them. So if we start teaching the pockets within our society, then we can change the lawyers and the police. I don't have anything against them. I thank God that they got me out of it. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd probably be in the cemetery. So the police did a fantastic job and I congratulate them. They got to court, it was a different matter. So I don't hate lawyers, I don't hate judges, I don't hate the system. I think the system just needs to understand and to be sensitive to the needs that not only is the perpetrator, whether it's a male or a female, they need to be held accountable. We need to stop making excuses. Oh, they're drunk, they're on drugs. You made the choice to hurt someone. You need to be accountable.
And Saha, what would you say that, I speak to people sometimes, some of the viewers maybe watching, you might, your partner or your husband, you might have gone to a party, he got drunk and punched you a few times and kicked you in the stomach. You rang the lawyer, you rang the police, and then you thought, it's a one-off, he apologised. We made love and I love him again. What about if this happened a few times, say a handful of times, and some guys have such smooth personalities but it's happened a few times.
I think we make excuses because, you don't want to destroy the family. People say, how can you be a mother and have children and leave this man? He's the father of your children. It's the fear of the unknown. We don't leave the person because we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if they're going to take our children away from us, male or female. So I think if I look back, once is enough. Don't accept it because I can tell you it doesn't stop. They can be smooth talkers and buy you a bunch of 1,000 roses. If they're going to do it once, rest assured, it's within them. I'm not saying leave them, you can get help for the person. I'm not saying, just go and get a divorce, straight away get your lawyer. But some people out there need to understand that they don't want to change. It's a power thing.
What about the male watching, the soft male who might be educated, but, you know, more maybe on the feminine side or the gentle side, and he's got some woman putting him down all the time. Why can't you be successful like that guy? Why are you such a soft cock? Why do you do this? You're shit at this. And he's getting constant emotional abuse to the point that he cries himself to sleep every night.
That's not acceptable.
No,
family violence.
And that happens.
Yeah, family violence is both male, female. What we must realise is that we all have to educate people, but more importantly, that guy has to stand up for himself. If the relationship is not working and he's just pretending that it's all good to save face, you need to start looking at your image. What image do you see when you look at that mirror? What reflection do you see? When I looked at that mirror, I didn't see myself. I lost my identity through that marriage. And lots of people lose their identity through a relationship that's not working. So what you must do, as hard as it may be, you must sit down with yourself and say, okay, where is this leading to? And the reality is, as hard as it is, you've got to let go. And letting go is the best thing, not because you want to destroy the family, but your psychological well-being is very important.
Do you think there's something seriously wrong with arranged marriages?
I think they're disgusting and they should be illegal. But what I see is a lot of young girls, they go overseas and they get married to, you know, Prince Charming, who is Prince Charming until he gets his visa. Once he's got his visa, that's it. They show their true colours. Arranged marriages might work for some people, but on the whole, the women that I've been dealing with are pretty much in hot water.
Tell me about once upon a time we used to go to nightclubs, have a few drinks, end up with a partner, get close and thought, oh, I might marry you, you know. And these days a lot of people are into internet dating where maybe they can find out a bit more about each other. What do you think about young people who are looking to meet up?
I think young people need to be very, very aware that the internet or whatever social media that they're using, people pretend to be something that they're not. You've got to meet the person first up, you know, face to face. You've got to get to know that person. You also need to know what kind of character you're actually dealing with. Violence or aggression is something that is often masked by people. So if you're going to get onto Twitter or whatever medium that you want to meet up with, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So my message for young people is don't rush. There's a lot of years for you to get your partner. You don't have to meet someone and say, oh, it's love at first sight. I think we get a lot of that kind of stuff from the television shows that we're watching, from all of the images on Facebook, etc. Everyone's got this lovely relationship. No one knows. My relationship, my family photo was, you know, pristine, beautiful, well-dressed characters, all with a smile. But that smile was masking the truth. The truth was family violence.
And Saha, what's the plan of attack for the great lady over the next 12 months? Will you be doing a lot more work and talks around Australia?
Yes, so hopefully Wise Angel Foundation will actually become bigger. It's only a year and a half. I'm doing a lot of fundraisers. So there's one coming up on the 30th of April at Moonee Valley. That's a cocktail party. So that is in itself, I do a lot of fundraisers and the money we raise goes 100% to the women. I've developed an app. It's an SOS app where you tap it 3 times. It goes to 3 of your contacts with a GPS of where you are. So I think I'm using my example and what happened to me and you know, all the stuff that I could have had to actually incorporate. So over the next 12 months, what I hope is to make a difference. Even if I make a difference to one person's life, then I've saved that person, because it's actually it's one person can change a whole entire country.
You're an amazing woman. I honour and respect you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks
we'll have you on
me.
again, but good luck for the next 12 months. And and I honour and respect you. Viewers, thank you very much. If you're going through some difficult issues, love and best wishes. Things will get much better. And remember, be courageous, be bold, and have a great night. All the best.